Assalamu alaikum everyone, and peace be unto you. Welcome to Islamic Learning with Masjid As-Sabur. I'm your hostess, Adrian Jasper. And Masjid As-Sabur, we are located at 4926 15th Avenue, which is here in Sacramento, on 15th Avenue off Stockton Boulevard. And we also have a website for you to visit. It's www.masjidassabur.org. And we have Friday prayer services every Friday at 1:30 p.m. So everyone's welcome to come and learn and be educated and meet the community. And today we have a very special guest who is going to be discussing his book titled Ashley's Racialized Asymmetry. And our topic today is examining race through Islamic eyes. And we are going to speak to a professor who is a education programs consultant and a professor of ethnic studies, and also my brother.
That plug should be first.
So tell them your name, who you are, and a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Malik Abdul-Khaliq. A little bit about my background. I'm a Sacramento native, born and raised. Been around the world, traveled a lot. I'm a scholar, an independent scholar of ethnicity and race in the United States, and then particularly speaking of Africans and African Americans, particularly Africans in the diaspora. I consider myself a scholar of comparative religion also. And with that being said, and also I dibble-dabble in education. I'm a consultant of education programs at California Department of Education. So with that being said, that's all that information coalesced, if you will, and culminated within this particular book that I did a study on.
Okay, so tell us the synopsis of this book.
Ashley's Racialized Asymmetry. In short, we have a young 16-year-old, 17-year-old white girl by the name of Ashley, and she's just coming into her own. What I mean by she's coming into her own is by way of her involvement in the Junior League of America. She's involved in as being a debater in that particular organization. She's a junior in high school, and as such, she's new to this organization, the Junior Statesmen of America. She's new to this organization, so she's the newbie, if you will. And as the newbie, she's provided the topic to cover in the debate that nobody else wants. And this debate is an academic debate. It's an academic tournament. So there are your hardcore sciences, your statistics, mathematics, chemistry, all those hardcore sciences. But then those topics that people invariably shy away from, history and things of that sort. She's the one left standing when everybody takes 10 steps back. She's left there standing. So she's had conferred upon her, the privilege of taking that non-wanted topic of history. Well, with that being said, she's introduced to an eye-opener because there's two coaches that she has. One is her high school coach for the team, and the other coach is a professor who's brought in from the local University of California, Irvine. And he's a heavyweight. He's a heavyweight. This is his field. And he introduces her to a slew, if you will, 17 books of some heavy material, respecting minorities in history, consisting of African Americans, Latinos, Latinas, Asians, Asian Americans, and gender also. So she's studying gender. But the primary focus is on minorities in history, and with the primary focus on race. So with that being said, she's a young white girl, and she's had a privileged upbringing. She's never had to focus on other than being privileged. And that's not negative, if you will, per se. It's not saying it makes her automatically a racist, but she's into the position of she now has an opportunity to question some of the perpetuators of racism in her small micro social world.
Yes, and it was very. When I read the book, it was very interesting because the book is very descriptive. It invokes a lot of visualizations. You know, as I'm reading, I could see the dialogue between her and her mother unfolding in her room. You know, very descriptive. I'm going to read an excerpt from this book when it's Ashley's in the room in her bedroom, and her mother is there, and she baked her some cookies.
Yes, yes.
And so Ashley asks her a question. She goes, "Mommy, why do black people evoke such fear and revulsion and hatred in the majority of white people?" And perhaps before her mother even processed the enormity of rhetorical taboos committed that were conveniently non-conventional in their customary parlance, Ashley followed that salvo with 4 more interrogatives. "Mommy, have you seen or heard of the latest derogatory depiction of President Barack Obama as being simility of a chimpanzee? Why have black people, particularly black men, been made out to be the corporeal and ontological antithesis of white people? And if, as you and Daddy have inculcated within me, a punitively impartial perspective of human beings that was, of course, bolstered by church theology, that we believe in the Father of God and brotherhood of men, then why doesn't that diversified spectrum of humanity transcend the rhetoric on Sunday and materialize socio-economically on Monday?" So Ashley had some very deep questions. She was asking, you know, we go to church and, you know, we hear all this, you know, theological, you know, preaching about, you know, the equality of man, but yet when we come home, you know, you and Daddy are talking something else behind closed doors, and I'm kind of conflicted. So, Mommy, tell me what's going on. Why is this? And her mother is just like silent.
Her mother's aghast.
So as a professor, have you been in a position where you've had students who you have been their first African American male instructor, and you know they had biases that you had to kind of inoculate? And so,
yeah, I've in the role of a professor, you know, I've had many students who have shared with me, you know, in an intimate and in an open way, you know, by way of class, by way of office discussions that we had, and openly by way of classroom discussions that we had, in the form of question and answers, or in the form of just sharing out with me that I was the first black male teacher that they've ever had. So some of these experiences have translated and materialized into the composite characters that exist in there. So I can't name all of the students, you know, who have, but these are composite characters, you know, who materialize within the book. And a lot of students, both white and black, along the whole social, ethnic and racial spectrum, have shared with me that this is their first time ever having a black teacher, much less a black male teacher, much less a black male teacher in a really form of authority, you know, as a professor. So then we have to unpack and disaggregate those type of social and economic and political and historical nuances that are subordinate to this type of materialization that they're expressing. So why am I the first black male teacher that you've had? Why am I the first black male professor that you've had? So as you start questioning that, and that's what Ashley's doing. Ashley's starting to look around because she's had impressed upon her a rather social consciousness awakening just by way of being introduced to reading material, just by way of being introduced to individuals, you know, who present for her a paradigm shift on how she's been raised. So just by being introduced to this topic, just by being introduced to this professor, and by being introduced to this slew of curricular material, she's now asking these particular questions. So she's asking her mother, and by way of processing this, it's not so much that she's fixated on her mother. Later on, that develops in the book as her mother as being one of the cardinal propagators, of racism, again, in her microsocial world. But she's looking around and like, wait a minute, mother, we go to church on Sunday. And again, with the whole notion of God being the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. But why is it that the brotherhood of man isn't represented in a diversified manner in our neighborhoods that we live in? So this neighborhood that we live in is all white. It's vanilla. And I noticed that the schools that I've gone to have been all white and have been vanilla, vanilla white. Except for the sprinkling of particular students, those who are on the ethnic level, and primarily speaking like Asian American students, who are outfitted with this most albatross sort of stereotype, if you will, being the model minority. They're the minority that's best represented as being academically and socially empowered, because they're trying to maybe be more like whites, but be less like blacks. But however, as Ashley calls it out to her mother, it's like even these small sprinkling of Asian students, who are supposed to represent the academic best, or the cream of the crop. Mm-hmm. We don't even have them in our neighborhoods. Matter of fact, when one tried to purchase a house or whatnot, they got shooed away. So she's formulating some really serious questions. she's having, if you will, a conflict of interest, if you will. So that's one of the reasons why on the front of the book, this beautifully encapsulates the turmoil clouds that Ashley has before her.
I got that.
On the right side is on the right side of the book is the chain link fence, dilapidated housing, tenements, ghettos, barrios, if you will. And this is what she's thinking about. On the left side is what that sort of lifestyle that she's accustomed to, and that sort of lifestyle that she's accustomed to, and that sort of lifestyle that is safe is the one enclosed by a white picket fence, properly trimmed trees, properly trimmed lawn. But on the other side of the fence, juxtaposed to that, there's no lawn, there's no white picket fence. Matter of fact, it looks almost like a prison industrial system, which many of these things, are grossly reduced down to. Making that prison industrial system, or those who live behind these gated fences being fodder, for this present preparation that they have awaiting them. Or on the other side of the street, white picket fence, best schools that you attend, nice diction being spoken, by Ashley and her mother, and her father. And now I deliberately touched on that particular diction also, not to eschew the dropping of the ings, at like a black English vernacular or things of that sort, but I'm giving the look into the development of this type of psyche that perpetuates sometimes the notion of white supremacy. And that notion of white supremacy that's perpetuated is due primarily to the absence of, or what can be reduced to cluelessness. The diction is there. The highfalutin language is there. They're speaking professional language. Her mother is a lawyer. Her father's an engineer. So this language that she's speaking, that she's utilizing in the discourse that she's having with her mother, some may say, well, the language is a little high. But this is a language that she's had ringing throughout her ears, in the course of her coming up, juxtaposed against the language of somebody who may reside in the inner city. This may be a little high. But also at the same time, let's think in terms of the unfortunalities, and the discriminatory manner in which the standardized tests that are developed, for who gets into your Stanfords, who gets into your UCLAs, who gets into your Princetons. Mm-hmm. They're based on this type of middle class, high middle class, or high level class sort of discourse, if you will.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some of the name a book, if you can name a book that had the strongest impact on someone that you've taught, that's like an Ashley, mm-hmm. who's never been exposed to African American history academically, and
I'd have to say two. First one being the autobiography of Malcolm X. I mean, and the second one being People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. First one, autobiography of Malcolm X. That was that tandem work by Malcolm X along with Alex Haley, who told his life. And this book has had an indelible, invariably indelible impact upon a lot of readers, and particularly some students, because this provided a glimpse into an angle or narratives of history that they weren't accustomed to hearing. See, K through 12, sometimes the curriculum in K through 12, and this, some of our scholars have called out, Toni Morrison has called this out in her book Playing Piano in the Dark, about the curricula that exists within K through 12 is not as diversified as it should be, or for those authors or those voices who do get incorporated within the canon of literature. Is still categorized, or still diametrically categorized as Western curricular literature, Black authors, Latino authors,
right.
As opposed to just Western authors. Why do they have to just be Black authors? So when you do that, well, any teacher, or some teachers, a lot of teachers, K through 12, who are making their respective selection for their curricula, well, maybe they may not have the opportunity to think in terms of dipping into a Black author or this or that. It should just, in my estimation, it should just be Western authors. But you have some creative teachers out there, some independent scholars, some independent thinkers who think in terms of incorporating aspects of Malcolm X's autobiography or people's history of the United States in, and when it touches some particular students, it radicalizes their thinking about history and thinking about themselves. So, and Ashley represents, as I said before, a composition of characters, students that I met before who, through my class or through other classes, by way of reading Malcolm X, have started thinking about things in different ways, or by reading People's History of the United States, not so much a patriotic version of the United States, but one that tells the true history of the United States, by one that visits the questions, and this is one of the things that Ashley gets into in this book is, let's talk in terms of Islam. By way of introduction to People's History of the United States, or Malcolm X's autobiography of Malcolm X, we come to find out that contrary to what history as it's being told, customarily, K through 12, as Islam had just recently been introduced into the American landscape, into the American landscape. Well, we come to find out through the true history of America that Africans, Islamic Africans, Muslims from Africa, had visited the eastern seashores and had set up encampments within South America, South America, and Central America, even at the end of the 15th century. This was at the time when the Islamic empires of the Ghanaian Empire, the Sankoria Empire were coming on the wane, and this is when Christopher Columbus in 1492 was sailing the ocean blue. So by way of information like this, and coming to find out that African Muslims had sailed the open ocean on their own and then set up encampments. When students are introduced to this, by way of an independent scholar or whatnot, their minds are blown. And they start questioning, just like Ashley questioned, like, well, wait a minute, who have been the perpetuators of this other type of knowledge? And why has this knowledge been omitted? And why are Black people, Black men, why do they evoke so much fear? Because again, absent that type of intimate knowledge on the knowledge that presents Black folk as being intellectuals, intelligent, spiritual, majority, and contrary to how history is taught customarily within K through 12. By way of those two books that I just enumerated, Ashley formulated the questions and the opinions that, wait a minute, Islam, the majority of Africans who were transported to the United States or Brazil for the purposes of the transatlantic slave trade, contrary to history, majority of them were Muslims.
Right.
Majority of them were Muslims because, again, as I iterated before, we had the Ghanaian Empire, we had the Songhai Empire. They were coming down to the wane, and those were Islamic empires. Here I'm talking about the areas of Baita Benin, Baita Biafra, Senegambia, Gambia, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Niger, Mali. Those areas were strongly Muslim. So she's introduced to this, and also her fascination with respect to Turkey. She's introduced to this, and she's like asking critical questions. Like, hey, mommy, what's going on? What's going on? And as you know, as if she was touched really by Malcolm, Malcolm X, that he's really, maybe touched her, and like, hey, maybe she probably saw herself as that young white girl, who asked Malcolm, hey, what can I do?
What can I do?
Yeah. what can I do?
Yeah. And in regards to the Quran and this subject, some people may not know, but the Quran tells us, it shows us who the first races in creation was.
Yes.
It shows us who the first races in creation.
And
I'm going to read. Yes. It believes is who was the God's top
angel.
top angel.
Yeah.
Before he fell.
One of the top malaika.
So I'm going to share this verse in the Quran. It's from chapter 7, verse 12 and 13. It says, God said, "What prevented you from bowing down when I commanded you?" He said, "I am better than he. You created me from fire and him from clay." God said, "Get you down from this. It is not for you to be arrogant here. Get out, for you are of the meanest of creatures." So right there, that false sense of pride made him not submit to God because he felt that he was better than Adam. And so now we have, when you look at, people who are at racism, that's that same arrogance. I'm better than you, and that's the spirit of Satan, that arrogance.
Yes,
so that's where that comes from. So people should really think about when they have that attitude, whether it's towards whatever, regardless of who it's towards, whether it's a black towards a white or white towards a black, whoever, that's the spirit of Satan, So that's something to think about.
Yeah. And that arrogance also has been addressed in other surahs in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sought to root that out. We have to remember, He's our maker. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows what bubbles beneath the surface, both our skin, of the epidermal level, and plus the psyche. He knows, so He sought to root that out at the very beginning. If I can just share two surahs. One is Surah 30, Surah Ar-Rum, which is a Meccan surah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in this particular surah that, and among His signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the differences of your languages and colors. Verily, and that are indeed signs for men of sound knowledge. So sometimes, and one of the reasons I was, with respect to writing this particular book, Ashley's Racialized Symmetry, is when we're dealing with race, when we're dealing with ethnicity, we're dealing with the human conjecture, respecting the understanding of these biological differences that exist amongst us. And to take up such a arbitrarily decided upon trait as skin color, when there's many other traits out there that are different, eye color, blood type, A, B, O, R. I mean, things of that course. So to pick up on skin color, and then, but worst of all, as opposed to seeing it as a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's magisterial, power and His significance and His beneficence and whatnot. Human beings in our reduced manner of thought have sought to construct a hierarchical social scale and to confer value upon skin color with the notion of whites being superior and blacks being inferior. And this whole notion of this thought isn't something new. This is something that I'm concocting, because we have Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when in Medina, and this was after the Hijrah. On one particular occasion, I'll just make a synopsis of this. On one particular occasion, some of the Sahabi were sitting around. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was absent, but some of the Sahabi were sitting around, and some of the Sahabi who were sitting around consisted of Salman al-Farsi, consisted of Bilal al-Rabah, consisted of Suhail al-Rum, and Bilal Rabah was Abyssinian, Salman al-Farsi was Persian, and Suhail was Roman, right? By today's anthropological standards, brown, black, and white, okay? So when an individual who was an Arab tribesman came in and saw these individuals, he said, who are these individuals here? What are they doing here? He said, I can see if they were from the Oz and the Khazraj, two other Arab tribes. He said, but what are these individuals doing here? That word got back to Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. He got extremely angered at that. And he had called the adhan. Not he called the adhan. He had somebody call the adhan, and that meant that people were going to congregate and come together. Something was going to be said. He said, look, he said the white is not superior to the black, nor is the black superior to the white. The thing that makes you superior to your kin is your level of taqwa. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hujurat, which is a Medinan surah, O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female and made you into nations and tribes that you may know one another. Verily, the most honorable of you with Allah is that believer who has at-taqwa, Allah consciousness.
And that's the perfect way to end this show.
Allah consciousness.
You know, race is not. You don't get points with God for the color of your skin. You know, it's your level of faith and and towards Him and servitude and.
Yes.
So the Quran has some definite solutions to racial issues. So people investigate this book, explore the Quran. Matter of fact, go to explorethequran.com and explore the Quran.
Yes. And although
so we are just about out of time.
Okay.
So thank you for tuning in to Islamic Learning with Master As-Sabur. If people want to get in contact with you, if they have questions, how can they reach you?
If they have questions for me, I can be reached through my website. It's www.ethnicdiscourses.com. Ethnic, ETHNIC, DISCOURSES.com. And they can to my website if they like, and they can just look at it, and
ask them for information.
Ask them information and things of that sort. Yeah, and I'm available. They can email me, and yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in to Islamic Learning with Master As-Sabur at www.master.sabur.org, master.sabursacramento.org. Friday services every Friday, 1:30 p.m. at 4920 15th Avenue, 4926 15th Avenue. Thank you for tuning in to Islamic Learning with Master As-Sabur, and I hope you learned a lot. Thank you. Good night.
Assalamu alaikum. I want to remind everyone, Masjid As-Sabur, 4926 15th Avenue. Our new masjid is gorgeous. We just finished planting over 100 plants in front of the masjid. We just got through cleaning up the kitchen and getting ready to clean up all of the wudu stations. And we want you to come and join us. Every Friday, 1:30 p.m., Masjid As-Sabur, Sacramento. We are also on the web, www.masjidassabur.org. And we're on Facebook, so please like us. Again, we thank you for your patience and your time. We want to remind you that God truly has a message for you. And we want to remind you that we are here to give you any help that you may need. As God has taught us, He is a merciful God. As long as you come to Him and ask forgiveness, He will forgive you. So no matter where you are in life, there is a hope for change.